Well, here we are, Stu.
Yes, here we are.
To commemorate our 50th episode.
Who would have thunk it?
I know. Now we're in person. You can actually see us. So if you see us on the street, pelt us with rocks and garbage or whatever gets in the way. But here we are. And Stu, I know you've extolled upon me the need to be positive.
Yes.
And you've tried to be a positivity coach throughout.
I failed. I failed in both counts there.
Well, maybe this time you might feel a little hope. I've decided in honor of your request, I'm going to do a special top 5 for this podcast. It's going to be my top 5 hatreds. I'll tell you what, though, it was really hard limiting to 5 things.
You've got a long list.
I do. It's extensive. But why don't I just get going? And I know a lot of this is going to piss people off, which only makes me happier. But here we are.
He means it.
Yes. Now, I know there's a lot of people who are members of the Beehive. You probably don't know what that is.
No idea.
Fans of Beyonce.
Oh, Christ.
But she is one of my top 5 hatreds. I've had enough of listening to her mediocre singing talents and whining every time she doesn't win a Grammy to a better singer. Her singing is that of a subpar step above J-Lo's, who also can't sing. She's just a whore. No offense. And if you want to talk about real singers, we can talk about Aretha Franklin. We can talk about Whitney Houston, people who had really quality voices. She is nothing but an entertainer. She's not a singer. And she whines every time she doesn't win a Grammy, cries racism. Well, it's not just her, but it's her whole entourage. I've had enough of her. And so the Beehive can sting me all they like. I will never waver from that opinion. How does that make you feel, Stu?
I'm here just to listen to how you can relieve yourself of all these bits of hatred. This is therapy. I understand that.
Well, the regular therapy doesn't work, clearly. But here we are to set number 2. This is something I have hated since birth. I am from New England originally, from Rhode Island, and I've had to put up with this worship of that repulsive family, the Kennedy family, okay? I've had enough of them. They are a bunch of drugged out Nepo babies who have long overstayed their presence on the national stage. They are smug, self-righteous, sanctimonious. And they have no right to be, because we all know where the Kennedy fortune came from. It was their patriarch, Joseph Kennedy. Joseph Kennedy was a Nazi sympathizer. He was a bootlegger, a crook, and a scumbag. And that's the only reason why they have the money.
What are the bad things?
I'm just getting started, Stu. And frankly, Camelot, the President Kennedy, is nothing but a myth.
The man served in World War II.
So what?
So what?
All right.
He served in danger.
All right. That's his one qualification, Stu, but he certainly wasn't qualified to be president of the United States. And while he was president, first of all, that election was actually stolen. It was a stolen election, the 1960 election. The Daily Machine in Chicago stuffed the ballots with dead people. We all know this. And Johnson did the same thing in Texas. This is what the Kennedy family and Joe did to engineer his victory. He was unqualified to be president. He was weak and spineless, and he brought us to the brink of nuclear crisis with the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I don't want to hear how well he handled it. It wouldn't have been there in the first place if the rightful leader had taken over. My hero, Richard Milhouse Nixon. But in all seriousness, Nixon could have contested that election, but unlike Al Gore and President Trump, he never did, because he didn't want to divide the country, and he let it go, even though he had a legitimate claim for a stolen election. It was 100,000 votes, and we now know in Chicago, Cook County, to vote and register to vote, it's very strict because of all the graft and corruption of the Daily Machine. Now, this is all speculation. Of course, I don't have, no one ever investigated it with the Kennedy money, but the Kennedys really have, and now look at what's left of the Kennedy family. I mean, we have one example, which is this repulsive head of HHS who doesn't
unacceptable.
Right. Who's like trying to undercut the use of commonly used vaccines. Speaking of that, I just got my measles booster and I have not become autistic. But anyway, that was number 2. The Kennedys. I know you're softer on them, but I'm not. Mm-hmm. Now, this one I'm sure you'll agree with, and it's number 3. These are not necessarily ranked. They're just choices. But let me refresh our memory of someone I've talked about over and over again, our last mayor of New York City, William de Blasio, Warren Wilhelm Jr., he destroyed the city of New York. He was one of the worst mayors in the history of New York, I think. I can't think of anything worse in my lifetime. New York, when he left office, was in a disastrous condition. We had increased crime. We had an economic disaster.
Thievery brought about by his wife with that.
Don't let me we'll talk about that. And also, people, it wasn't just his viewpoints and him being a progressive. It wasn't that made him. He was a smug, obnoxious, arrogant buffoon.
Pizza with knife and fork.
Oh, don't even get. And he killed the groundhog. Remember that? He dropped a groundhog on Groundhog Day, and the groundhog ended up. Yes. And he was also, as you were noting, Stu, highly unethical and corrupt. His wife was put in charge of a mental health initiative. $800 million to close to $1 billion. They can't seem to account for what happened. And let's face it, mental health crisis in New York City is worse than it's ever been. All you have to do is walk on the streets and you can see people shooting up drugs and all over the place. It's really disgraceful. It's like the Tenderloin in San Francisco. So Bill de Blasio, I don't know if there's really anything worse than him. And what's also I find astounding is, despite what I believe is probably a lot of corruption and graft that he was involved in, Fat Alvin Bragg and DL Tish James, I told you on the train, I think she's a DL lesbian. So she and he, they seem to be very prosecutorially hungry to go after Trump with cases that still have not finished with their appeals. And we'll see how they all turn out. But why is it that they seem so soft on de Blasio? Do you have an explanation for that? If they're such champions of justice, why is it only...
I don't understand why there was never a serious investigation with respect to that mental health organization that de Blasio's wife had. I never read anything more. No follow-up. I can't understand who should have brought it. Could have been federal charges, of course. But it seems to have drifted into nothingness.
Well, when you're from the right kind of thinking to some people, it's no longer offensive.
Maybe so.
And of course now he'll never probably be elected to anything ever again. But I mean, this is New York City. We've even come up with the worst candidate for mayor, but who's... And I do realize that, and this is going to get to my fourth hatred, which is buses, Stu. I absolutely hate buses. They are the most annoying form of transportation ever. So Madmani can promise all he wishes to provide free bus services. There is no such thing as a free lunch. I don't want a free bus. I don't want to get on a bus.
A lot of us use them. A lot of people, on limited income use them all the time. It's a necessary means of transportation.
Not for me. I'd rather walk or take a bus.
You're an elitist.
I am, and I'm proud to admit it. But also, not only that, buses are inefficient and slow. They do not get to the right places on time. They are huge. They smell inside. The seats are uncomfortable.
They can't all take Ubers, David.
Well, I'm just expressing my opinion about the bus, and you, in your stature in life, should not be on a bus. I will not allow it.
my stature in life.
Yeah. Why are you such a steadfast defender of the bus? Have you ever been on a Greyhound bus on going from
Yes.
Oh, it was a disaster. I remember one time when I was younger, when I took a bus, this was my last bus experience, and I said, I'm never getting on a bus. I took a Greyhound bus from Providence, Rhode Island to New York City. I was going for Christmas time, and the people in front of me were eating some kind of food that was disgustingly smelly. I had to smell it the whole ride, and I was like, that's the last. And then you go to Port Authority, which at the time and still today is that's really, it's like a peep show of weirdos, and it's also a little unsafe. But buses, no, I'm out. No buses for me.
Well, people need buses to go to work and get home, and they can't afford other means of transportation, and they have schedules to keep. And I simply wish that we could get the scum out of there who aren't paying. That's the problem.
Oh, we're going on the fare beating thing. Well, what do you have to say about someone who wants to offer free bus fares, Stu?
Oh, That's one of the new guy, Madmani or
Yes,
Manny or whatever that's going to end up.
Yeah. Well, what's funny about it, he has MTA is a state-run operation.
No authority.
He has no authority. He can appoint 2 board members. Kathy Hochul appoints the rest.
A lot of his stuff has been stuff over which he has no effective control.
I mean, do you think he realizes he's saying stuff he can never do, or does he just say it because he's an idealist and an idiot?
There's a lot of that.
You think he's an idealist and an idiot?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he means what he says, but it's not practical much of the time.
All right. Well, I think my last hatred, which is a new hatred, I haven't really discussed it with you yet, but you might actually feel a little more sympathetic to this than my condemnation of the bus. The new crop of West Village residents. It is a spectacle of annoyance. Okay. It is all a bunch of 20s, 30-somethings, and they have all of a sudden in the last 2 or 3 years overtaken brownstones, rentals in the West Village, and they cackle loudly. A lot of them, particularly the women, wear very inappropriate clothes for their body type. Short shorts and halter tops. I'm sorry, if I'm sitting down for my breakfast and having my eggs Benedict, I don't need to see your flab hanging out. Okay.
Well, they're not really concerned. They're not really concerned about what you want, and they have what might be considered to be a skewed perspective on what works for them.
Well, this isn't working, and it isn't working for me. And it isn't working. I mean, the neighborhood is a historic neighborhood. It's usually quiet and kind of peaceful. It has been overrun. And it's like being in New Jersey, I'm telling you. It's awful. Awful. It's the worst nightmare of my life.
Well, look, there's been a progression. I mean, people that come into downtrodden areas first are the poor or those of limited income. And then actors come in, it used to be. And I have a certain sympathy for that. And they come in because they can afford to be there. They can afford to find a place to live. They can have a drink. They can work their comic routines in little places. But as places get established, then other types move in our building. I mean, you see, there used to be academics, and now it's more
trust fund brats.
Mommy and daddy got the apartment, or
right. None of them paid for it with their own money. So I'd like to drop them off the roof, but. Besides that, Stu, though, these are young 20-somethings, and historically they usually lived in Murray Hill, and I want them back there. I don't want them in my neighborhood. I don't want them crowding restaurants. The voices on them. Oh, my God, when you go to a restaurant, it is so loud and annoying. I mean, I know they're happy, but that probably only sickens me more.
There was an article on this subject. Of moving into one's apartment.
It was in the New York
Times, where the article on this person who's some influencer of some kind.
Yeah.
And she's got a lot of followers, and she said in a paper once, I just bought an apartment in the Upper West Side. The board didn't think much of all that. The board said, they
didn't let her in. She tried to buy Babe Ruth's apartment. That's a different neighborhood. I don't care if they move to the Upper West Side. I just don't want Now, another thing I've noticed is a lot of the men, okay, they always wear these pants like you're golfing, okay? Like the things you wear. I don't know what the material is.
It used to be called.
Right.
There was another name.
Polyester or whatever.
I don't know.
And they all use the word dude, bro, chill, and fuck constantly. That's all they do. I was like, obviously, I don't understand. I assume a lot of these people have pretty high-end kind of venture capital, crypto jobs, and they probably went to pretty good schools, but this is their vocabulary. From a neighborhood that attracted writers and literary people, now we have these morons.
Well, someone listened to your language on this show.
Yeah. Well, I'm using it for effect. And I'm using other vocabulary words. And you have not heard me. I'm not from California. I don't use words like chill, bro, dude, and the rest. It's ridiculous.
And dude.
I can't stand it.
I can't stand dude.
But on that note, Stu, those were my top five hatreds for now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an evolving list.
Sure, it's ever growing.
There are some honorable mentions. There's
no.
I mean, the Clintons were good at honorable mentions.
Another day.
Yeah, I'll leave it be. But I'm going to let you now tell me more about some of your adventures.
Well, I just wanted to let you know about something that took place last night, and it's taking the place of something else I was going to do today. But I know how you have a certain sympathy for all the places I like to go to dine, as I might put it. And you say you won't go to some of them because you don't want to get sick. You're not
Hepatitis. Let's get clear.
Anyway, so my friend Sandy, Sandy, right there. My friend Sandy and I were going up to a place that I had spied. I know you'll find this hard to believe. And the New York Times Best 100 New York City restaurants.
Best 100 of what?
Of New York City
Okay.
for 2025 restaurants. So I happened to look at that list, and I don't usually, but there it was. There was this little place, and it was in a part of New York City that I don't think you go to often. Staten Island's very limited for you. And
I've been there twice.
Twice.
Okay.
And then this one was up in 188th Street.
So what's that, Washington Heights?
No, it's on the other side. It's on the east side, so it might be, I don't know, Spanish Harlem or something. Fordham. It's on Fordham Road and 188th. And it was this little place that I read about, and it was called Cuchifritos, I guess. Cuchifritos. And it had, and there it was. After the top 10, which were given some special attention in the article, there was this thing about Cuchifritos. They were in alphabetical order, but they had digits in front, 188 being their address. And so I said, and it was Dominican and Mexican and Latin, and they had all kinds of words. The review was by their standard Times food reporter.
Okay.
And so I said, I went up there a month or two ago, and I just loved the environment. It was very basic. It was very real. There was food, but there was no pretense, no shiny stuff, and just normal human beings struggling to get by. And I liked the environment. And so I took Sandy up there.
I'm already disturbed.
I know you are. I know you are.
Okay.
I know you are. So I went up there, and that first time I went up, I tried to tell them that they had been on the list, the top 100, and I couldn't make language contact. And I did get an email place to send some info, and I was hoping they'd get it because I thought it would be useful to post somewhere if people read English. It's that area where it's a lot of Spanish. So I went in, and I couldn't make contact again last night, but it was rather strange. The people behind the counter, there were 4 or 5 of them, just were a little resistant to even my inquiry so that I could explain why I was here.
They probably thought you were ICE.
I brought a little folder with a copy of what was in the Times, and I had it in my hand, and it started to get even more, a little bit sour. One guy who was seated at the counter, he comes up to me, chunky guy, friendly. He says, well, what did you want to say to them? Let me explain it to them in Spanish. And I took out the Times stuff, gave it to them, and all of a sudden their coldness disappeared, and these ladies were like, "Thank you, we appreciate that." And then he helped us decide on certain items. Sandy wasn't as enthusiastic about this place as I was.
That poor woman.
But I told her it was a good experience. Right. So we talked about it later, and Sandy's a perceptive lady, and she said, got to the point you got to earlier. She said, you had a folder. It was like what do you call it? Whatever they come in FedEx kind of things.
Right.
Which is kind of cardboard-like. And then inside I had the sheet. I wanted to protect it, to give them something that could be posted. And she said, I think they were getting scared. And I said, I think you're right. They weren't busy, some of them I was trying to talk to. They were unwilling to communicate. And so we both concluded that they were nervous about it, and then they went to a very friendly thing once the guy explained it. But
once
I think it was a raid-related thing.
Once they realized you weren't interlopers, they decided to welcome you to the. Now, how was the food, Stu? I've heard about your building bridges and United Nations effort there, wherever the hell you were in Upper Manhattan. You weren't in the Bronx.
This is in the Bronx.
It wasn't. You said
Fordham Road.
Okay, so it was the Bronx.
Street,
okay.
Bronx.
Why didn't you just say it was in the Bronx? I said, where was this? Washington Heights?
Oh, I said, no, it's on the east side. To that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were in the Bronx.
Yeah, the Bronx.
Okay.
The people were wonderful. Of course, I didn't have my phone, my iPhone. With
of course you didn't. He never carries his phone.
So there was some discrepancy as to where the place was. It's hard to find. But anyway, that's my story of how a food incident, in one of the top 100, David, my food incident was hurt a little bit by by immigration matters.
It's unfortunate that this is the time where you can't go to some hole-in-the-wall restaurant in the middle of nowhere, Manhattan or Bronx, wherever, and this is what you have to deal with now because of Donald Trump. I'm sorry, Stu. I'm sorry. I really am.
I say get rid of firm borders, and if people are crooks, criminals, have bad backgrounds, get their asses out of here. I have more sympathy for those who have spent 15 or 20 years with families. Up comes the word nuance, David. That's a word that is missing in this administration.
Well, of course, because it's all theater and bells and whistles and bullshit. But what's even funnier, he recently said that he's planning to grant amnesty to people who work on farms and hospitals, food workers, and the whole thing, which is going to
backtrack later,
which is going to outrage a lot of these, anti-immigrant Marjorie Taylor Greene
people
types
to pick crops. And a lot of farmers are probably speaking to him about all that, whether it's New York State or California. You need people, and you got to make systems that work.
Well, he plans to import them from Norway and Finland instead of because they're just dying to come here, even though they have a better quality of life, supposedly. Besides the fact that the weather sucks and it's cold and miserable in those places.
That's my story, dude.
Well, I'm glad you took Sandy, that poor woman, to these places. What's it called again?
Cuchi, C-U-C-H-I, Fritos, F-R-I-T-O-S. My guess is it means it's an endearing kind of reference to fried foods, that's what a lot.
Well, do you think the food deserved to be on the top 100?
I can't say. I mean, I doubt it in a typical sense because there are all these fine fashion things, but I think. And again, it was the Times guy.
You can't always go by what the New York Times says.
Well, but it was he loved some of their stuff.
I guess your bottom line.
I loved it.
The food was so to you.
I think it was better than so.
All right, it was good, but it wasn't like your fish bowls.
No, I know the fish balls. Yeah. The balls, fish balls. No.
All right. Well, speaking of New York City and its decline, I am going to. I've already had a number of discussions about Madmani, the Democrat mayoral candidate.
Yeah, it's a very sad thing.
One of our loyal listeners wanted to know if I was going to come up with a nickname for him and had appreciated some of the other nicknames we've used in the past.
Yes.
I mean, one of my favorites is Tampon Tim, although I admit I took that from elsewhere. It wasn't my own original thought, but I love it because it really captured his essence as a football coach, that he put tampons in the men's rooms in high schools. But, I also like, and this was a Trump insult, actually, is Pocahontas for Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
That was really a good one to me. But there's so many others. But on that note, Stu, they wanted one for our socialist, anti-Semitic neophyte who's running for mayor, who also happens to be a Nepo baby. And I'm going to say he has so many facets of dysfunction, it's kind of hard to come up with one. But here's my idea was Madmani, which I think is okay. And then you said Damn Manny.
Damn Manny.
I don't know which one is best, but perhaps if anyone dares to comment, you might want to.
If you have a solution or suggestion.
But I mean, it's really hard to capture him fully because he's so disturbing. And he actually, as you said, we discussed earlier, I think he actually believes the kind of nonsense he says, which indicates that he's not very smart. He's just very articulate.
And management experience and real life experience in business and large organizations.
Well, I mean, he does have a degree in Africana studies from Bowdoin College.
Bowdoin's a good school.
$92,000 a year. Now, if I was paying $92,000 a year and my kid came home and said, I'm going to major in Africana studies, I'm like, yeah, no, you're not.
Well, he's an Africana, yes.
Well, he claimed to be. He claimed to be. But at the end
maybe
of the
he thought the degree made him one.
Maybe. But regardless, right now in this race, the latest poll is as follows. Madmani or Madmani or Damn Mammy or whatever we want to call him is at 35%. Cuomo is at 29%. Sliwa is at 16%. Adams, 14%. So he's in the bottom, Adams. And then the guy who's running as an independent is at 1% of the vote. That's the latest poll. So if you look at all this, he's getting a lot of good press and fanfare and his trajectory, his win, but he's really not getting even close to 50% of the vote. The only problem is the other candidates are, none of them are willing to kind of coalesce around Run to put a stop to it. Now, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal recently that the last day about how a number of, business leaders are getting together, putting together a pact to try to put an end to it because they're concerned about this guy becoming mayor. So we'll see what's going to happen. I'm not so sure about it, but
you were very clear. I thought it was pretty astute when I was saying Cuomo. It's an easy case. He'll be in. They're going to overlook certain things. We want someone who can show he can manage. Will overlook things. You showed restraint on that early in the game, and you talked about the possibility of this guy or some other character gaining attention. And boom, I was just stunned.
Well, I am surprised. I guess I was also away when he started having his trajectory, and I got some warning texts from people, but I wasn't certain. Then when I got back, it was clear. But look, face it, Cuomo is a hateable person. Yes. He isn't all that great of a politician. He's awful. He's just an awful, arrogant. He's another Nepo baby. He would be nowhere near he is today, but for his father. I
thought he could make it.
Well, he clearly didn't. He may revive himself, but I don't really know. I don't know. But beyond this, in response to the Madmani, win, the New York Times of all places and the New York Post, of course, is having a field day with him. But the New York Times over the weekend, over the July 4th weekend, came out with an article about how when he applied to college, they had somehow gotten his Columbia application because it had been hacked by a hacker, and then they supplied it to the New York Times because they were investigating Columbia's kind of racial preferences and admission and the like. And his application came through. Now, he's described himself as East Indian and Muslim, Stu. But on his application, he checked down that he was African-American and black. And clearly he isn't.
You can choose.
Right.
Different days.
Now, regardless of his attempt because at the time he applied, Columbia had an affirmative action program. So if you were black, African-American, you got a preference in the admissions. The standards, the academic standards were a little less. So that they could have a more diverse class. So he didn't get into Columbia anyway, regardless of his ploy. And I think it's kind of funny. His father's a professor at Columbia, Stu. And do you think the admissions committee didn't realize that when he applied? And they know who his father is and what he's all about. He's a very outspoken professor, and he has some very radical viewpoints. So obviously Columbia's like, nice try, and then they rejected him because I'm sure they don't like dishonesty in a college application. Now, a lot of people defended why are we talking about what he did when he was 18 years old, and I kind of agree with that to some degree, but look, come on, trying to lie. And when he was asked today about this whole thing, he said, well, I was born in Uganda, which is true, he was, but that doesn't make him black or African. He's East Indian. They were asking about his background. So even today, he will not acknowledge his mistake or apologize for the fact that he was basically trying to lie his way into an Ivy League school. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him. Now, as another note, right, his father is really a very radical person. And he also has said a lot of anti-Semitic things. They say that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And what we know about him, he described Israel as a neo-Nazi solution. The father. And it's on video. This is who he was raised by. So it might explain some of his, viewpoints. And Madmani has also said, which I didn't discuss the last time, that Judaism and Zionism are not the same thing. Now, I'm not Jewish, but isn't Zionism part of the Jewish identity? And who is he to make that statement? Why do we have to treat him with kid gloves because he's Muslim and Asian and apparently African as well and black? That's an anti-Semitic comment in and of itself. It's a total lack of sensitivity to people who are Jewish because for whatever reason, these very far left progressives have some animus towards Jews, not just this Israeli government and what they do, because it seems to go much further than that.
I agree. I'm Jewish, and I I mean, I understand Zionism can mean different things to different peoples. I'm no authority on any of this, but I mean, I have a feeling that, not a feeling, I have a belief that Israel has a right to exist. Beyond that, I don't see why there's a growth in the animus, as you put it. Partially it's grown in recent months because of excesses, what I'll call excesses in aggressive activity with respect to against Hamas. Now, on the one hand, it may be excess because a lot of people are getting killed. We're getting killed, right. Huge numbers. Excesses in one sense, not excesses in another. When you know that Hamas and Iran were and are dedicated to the destruction of Israel, so it's a very complicated picture. But I think the growth of the anti-Semitic movement, almost I'll call it, in the U.S. is partially fueled by the large numbers of Middle Eastern people who have been killed in the Israeli attacks.
I think that's part of it, but I also think it's a little ignorant of what's really happening, of course. And this guy can't go around and act like some kind of woke warrior when he's not so woke himself. And I will conclude with my last, as you recall, when Kamala Harris condemned Columbus Day in that speech, that was the last straw for me about her. Well, this asshole had a picture of himself either on social media somewhere flipping the bird at Christopher Columbus. So not only has he disrespected Jewish people, he has disrespected my people.
Oh, that's fatal.
That's it. So as far as I'm concerned, I would vote for de Blasio over him.
No, you wouldn't.
Yes, I would. I'm steadfast.
Okay.
But in that note, Stu, why don't we switch gears a little and we'll move on from the latest update on this complete sham of a candidate.
Well, I just have a few words to say about my feelings with respect to the implications from the flooding in Texas and the horrible loss of life. We've all seen in recent months and last couple of years an increase in the intensity of bad weather, the frequency of serious catastrophic weather. And reasonable people, I think, would agree, though not many in the Trump camp, that it certainly is climate change, and we have a lot to do with climate change. And of course, while this is going on, and of course in the Texas case, the Doge-like mentality that was cutting people in the weather service, cutting FEMA, cutting a number of things, coincides with the loss of information being given to people in times of catastrophe. And Trump, of course, has responded in the last day or two. We'll take care. We've taken care. He put it in the past tense. We've taken care of the FEMA question. So it was first he wanted to eliminate them, and that would be, I think, a disaster. But then he said we fixed the problems. I don't know how and when he did this, in overnight, in what place. People need notice. People need warning. They can't rely upon state and local people to do some of these things. And FEMA was, as many problems as we've had with it, needs to be around to help people in times of catastrophe and coordinate others. And the Doge-like mentality, this cut and burn, I mean, just no thought being given to when you were making cuts. I'm all for getting rid of waste and corruption. Most people are, but I'm pretty aggressive on that. But you got to have some reasoning. You got to have some study, some investigation before you decide who goes and why. And that wasn't occurring. It hasn't occurred and is already having disastrous consequences. And so it's more than just a, what is it in the cave that's the warning, the canary in the cave?
Canary in the
coal mine. It's more than, it is happening. We're losing stuff. So, in a related matter, I would just say key administrators in the Environmental Protection Agency have been replaced by hacks, political hacks, who have an interest in promoting the interests of oil, gas, chemicals, cement, and not the environment itself. And that plays into these needs we have to protect what we have around us, and the Doge-like eradication of the Environmental Protection Agency without thinking of longer term interests. And the elimination of subsidies, or the elimination of emphasis upon clean fuels, solar and wind. Other parts of the world are understanding this, but we're eliminating this in a Doge-like manner.
So it sounds to me like the moral of your story is there are two aspects to this. There is the change in environmental policy from the Biden era policies, which were extreme in a different way. And then just clear mismanagement and incompetence, which I think is the more immediate story in the flood story. Yeah. Now, I heard that Ice Barbie took 3 or 4 days to respond into the flood in Texas. She was too busy getting Botox and a Rolex. I mean, so you also have a very incompetent group of people in these high-level positions within the government. You know, people who like, you know, there's many examples, but in this case, I think she's one of the people responsible for this. And you know, when you choose TV personalities and, you know, people with nice boobs and all the rest for positions, this is a disaster. So
and people refuse to stand up. I mean, Republicans refuse to stand up and say, no, there's a lack of quality here, a lack of expertise. Certain people should not have been selected. Most of the people, even Senator Tillis from down in
and he's resigning.
North Carolina.
Right?
Is he North Carolina? Where he said, and now he's not going to run again. And now he's coming out and saying he's really sorry that he voted for Hegseth.
Right.
Well, God damn it. Everyone knew this man was incompetent, not qualified to run a small organization, no less something big. We're not interested in how much of a warrior he was. That's a nice quality, but that's not the, that's
well,
not
first
the
of all,
picture.
I question whether he is a warrior. I mean, I do know he's got a nice tan and he dresses well and he looks good on TV, but I don't know about warriors too.
Well,
what I
I'm
do
just
know,
not going to quibble over question what his actions were in combat and
well,
overseas.
I don't know what they were either, but I do know that he has got an alcohol problem and he got paid off some woman who he sexually abused.
Yeah.
Talks about being some Christian, yet he's been divorced on his third marriage and had kids out of wedlock. Now, I don't care what people do. Don't get proselytized to me about Christianity.
Fair point.
Right. He's a complete hypocrite. And he's obviously focusing on a lot of missed priorities in the military, like banning books from the Naval Academy library that he doesn't like and all the rest of it. It's crazy. But this is what we've come down to. We got Madmani on one side and we got, you know, the Orange Maniac on another. It's a negative concoction.
That's it for me on that front.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is the concludes our discussion for today, Stu.
Yes.
I hope you've been able to get through it with the cameras on you, although I know with your acting abilities.
Well, I wasn't playing to the camera. It was suggested I do that, and I just didn't.
You didn't do it?
No. Not intentionally. I was just engrossed, engaged with you. And
as you should be. As you should be. But on that note, I hope you'll tune into this and leave comments, which I will be sure to.
This was our 50th.
No, this is 51st.
51st.
Yeah,
this one,
yeah.
Yes.
So I guess we're all done today, and it's good to see you all in person. I hope you can say the same.
Take care, folks.
Yeah.